Okay. Hello, everyone. I just want to first start and say thank you all for being here today, and I hope you all are staying warm and safe out there with the weather conditions that we've been having. So welcome today to the Clean Fuels and Fleet Transition listening session. We're really excited to have you here today. This listening session is being brought to you by the Maryland Energy Administration in coordination with the Maryland Clean Cities and Communities Coalition as well. So we're very excited. This session will be moderated by me. My name is Natalie Buscini. I'm the Transportation Program Manager at the Maryland Energy Administration, and I'm also the Coalition Director for Maryland Clean Cities and Communities. And then we will also be having Pratiksha as well. She will be moderating. She's an energy specialist at MEA as well, and she's the co-director for the coalition too. So we are going to get started. Okay, so some key drivers for electrification and clean fuels. And the reason why we wanted to make this listening session not just about electrification, but also clean fuels in general, is that we understand a lot of fleets and a lot of organizations are maybe not ready for electrification yet, and that is completely okay. And we wish to support that. And I'll give a little bit more information on why clean fuels is important in this type of discussion. So some key drivers, we have three listed here. So one is the environmental impact. So we want to look at the significant reduction in pollution and GHG emissions, very, very important. Operational efficiency as well. So we want to look at, is there a low cost of ownership, the reduced fuel and maintenance expenses, and then lastly, the energy independence. Diversifying fuel sources away from the fossil fuel market is an advantage as well. So those are the key drivers that we have up here. This is not the solidified list. Obviously, there are many, many more key drivers, but these are the few that we are just focusing on today. Okay, so I want to give a little introduction to what Maryland Clean Cities and Communities is. This is a very important thing that we wanted to discuss because MEA specifically really focuses only on electrification, while Clean Cities and Communities really focuses on any type of fuel. It is fuel agnostic, and so that's why I wanted to give a little brief introduction to some folks who may not have heard about the Clean Cities in general. So what is Clean Cities and Communities? Clean Cities and Communities is a DOE national partnership to advance alternative transportation nationwide. So there are more than 75 DOE designated coalitions throughout the country, and they work locally in urban, suburban, and rural communities as well to strengthen the nation's environment, energy security, and economic prosperity. And some other key points just to note. So the coalitions, they work with the DOE's Vehicle Technologies Office, and they work to deploy affordable and efficient transportation fuels, energy efficient mobility systems, and other fuel saving technologies and practices. So like I stated, we have more than 75 DOE designated coalitions that work in communities across the country, and it collectively covers about 93% of the US population. So a coalition is present in almost each state and really just trying to work to implement these types of different fuels, may it be renewable fuels, electric vehicles, of course, auto reduction measures, efficiency improvements, mobility choices, and emerging transportation technologies. And then lastly, just to kind of give a little glimpse into what coalitions are comprised of. So the coalitions can be comprised of businesses, fuel providers, vehicle fleets, state and local government agencies, and community organizations. So the Maryland Clean Cities and Communities Coalition is housed in MEA. So it's housed in a state agency. And that is just one of the many ways a coalition can be designed, built, and implemented. And then usually each coalition is led by an on-the-ground coalition director, which is me, and then my co-director, Pratiksha. And we tailor projects and activities to capitalize on unique opportunities within the community, so within the state of Maryland. And then just a last little fun tidbit, nationwide, nearly 16,000 stakeholders are part of coalitions. So we have a lot of reach across the country, which is really great. And we are really trying to transform those local and regional transportation markets through these collective efforts. So it is not just one coalition doing it all, we do it all together, which is really exciting to share those experiences and lessons learned. And then just specifically to get into what Maryland Clean Cities and Communities is, our mission and our goals, so you can understand where we're looking at to improve and just gain perspective as well. So the mission for Maryland is to work with vehicle fleets, fuel providers, utilities, community leaders, and other stakeholders to support these cost-effective, energy-efficient, and low-emission transportation solutions. And a keynote is that it's across all clean fuels and technologies. So that includes electric, hydrogen, renewable diesel, propane, CNG, LNG, RNG, and hybrid systems. So it's a vast amount of fuels, and once again, being fuel agnostic. And in terms of our goals, so these goals that we are really striving to reach and continue to build upon is enhanced stakeholder engagement. Another reason why we have this great call right now. Expand clean vehicle fuel pathway options and EV infrastructure adoption. And then lastly, we're really looking to strengthen organizationally and technical capacity as well. One of the really last great things I'll touch on for Clean Cities is we have a really great technical resource available through Clean Cities. And so whatever type of fleet, whatever fuel they're looking to kind of maybe think about entertaining, is it something that would be feasible for their fleet in terms of pricing, in terms of location, anything of that sort, Clean Cities has some type of resource out there. So there's a lot of great things that are happening with Clean Cities and Communities. So I wanted to give a brief introduction into what we do on that aspect as well, in addition to MEA as well. Okay, so I am going to pause before I move into the listening prompts. Does anyone have any questions or anything that they want to ask about Clean Cities in general before I pass it over to Pratiksha to go into the prompts for today's listening session? Hearing none, perfectly fine. I'm going to pass it to Pratiksha, and she's going to go into multiple prompts we have for you all. The main goal is to kind of have some prompts up on the screen. If you'd like, you can either go off mute and answer them and provide your perspective, your insight, your challenges, or you can put them in the chat. And then we're going to really gather the responses that we receive and kind of use that to see how we can make our programs better at MEA, specifically on the transportation side, see how we can engage with you all better, and just kind of have a learning experience. So I will pass it to Pratiksha.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Well, hi everyone. My name is Pratiksha Ganeshan. I am a transportation energy specialist at the Maryland Energy Administration and the co-director for the Maryland Clean Cities and Communities Coalition. It is very nice to be here today, and it's very nice to meet you all. Before we jump into the next section, I just want to emphasize that today's session is intended to be a listening session. We are not here to present solutions or push any specific technologies, but to hear directly from you about your experiences, challenges, and priorities. The questions on the next few slides are meant to help guide the conversation, but feel free to share insights beyond what's on the screen. Your feedback is going to be very helpful in helping us inform MEA's future programs, resources, and support for clean transportation across the state. And this is kind of where we stop talking and you guys start talking. Next slide, please. We're going to start out with sort of a big picture context just to understand where you are with your clean fleet, or if you're looking to even transition. And please feel free to take it away from here. If you have anything to add to the conversation, feel free to come off of mute, or you can also raise your hand or just put things in the chat.
And so I'll start us off. To give a little background as well, we used and created these prompts based on the responses that we received from everyone who signed up. So I know you all have some things that you want to discuss in terms of fleets and stuff like that. So maybe let's start with one of the questions just to get everyone rolling and get that talking out there. Does anyone have any guidance or any things from their fleet perspective? What, in terms of any type of fuel or maybe electric or anything like that, what would a successful clean fleet transition look like to you all? And what might be your typical time frame for that? Would it be maybe 5 years? Would it maybe take a little bit longer to implement that type of transition? Really looking for anyone to kind of come off mute, please, and just give a little introduction into what that might look like for you all.
Hey, Natalie, I can jump in here. Hey, everyone. My name is Maggie. I work for DHL Supply Chain. I am working on projects that replace diesel trucks with electric trucks. So I would say for us, a successful clean fleet transition would look like all diesel trucks replaced with all electric trucks. I don't know if we have 2030 and 2050 goals in place. So those are, big picture time frames. But I would say as far as full clean fleet transition, maybe 5, 10, 15 years, something like that. That would be, ideal outlook, and I think we would categorize that as successful.
That sounds great, Maggie. Anyone else looking to transition their fleet?
Hey, it's Tyler with Tamil Enterprises. We're in the processes of doing it. There are some hurdles and challenges that we're still battling through with manufacturers, where some of the stuff isn't compatible yet with electric units, so like accessories. But over the time, as the European markets are starting to develop it, you're starting to see a lot of that equipment migrate to North America. So probably for us, looking at like our industry and the items that we use, it's probably more in the 15 to 20-year range. Theoretically, I'll probably have a better sense on speed of transition probably the second week of March, after I come back from a big trade show out in Vegas that's hosted once every 3 years. In which the last one we went to in 23, a lot of the new clean fleet transition items were there, not with just electric, but with hydrogen units as well now. But that's really where I see us being at, based on our market utilization and the vehicles that we use, and that the on-road and the off-road, and what the ability is that we need for our demand.
That sounds great. And yeah, 15 to 20 years does seem like a more reasonable timeline, especially if you are looking to transition a lot of off-road equipment. But did either of you want to discuss what your biggest motivator is to switch to a clean fleet? Was it just the maintenance in the long term, or are you looking to get significant greenhouse gas emission reduction, or was it something else?
Like for us, like we've had EV or house power units. Probably, I mean, our first house power unit, we've had it since '08. And over that time, um, the operational cost or the cost of unit life is less, but it's less over a very elongated period. That's where you start to see a cost benefit, and a lot of that cost to the startup cost to the unit is very heavy. So that's the challenge to it. Um, right, and like a lot of our EV stuff and house power units are utilized indoors. So it reduces the emissions and the filtering and worker exposure, and it gives an overall better working atmosphere um, for the human element day in and day out, really.
That is very important to note. Yes, Basam.
Hey, good morning. This is Bassam, construction project supervisor on City of Baltimore. So just quick discussion about question one. That's the same thing you say, guys, is about 10 years and more to be fully successful clean. And I think the challenge we're facing, it's infrastructure of the power supplies. Maybe that's the one of the major ones, especially when that's numbers, secondary number will be increased if you want to put EV charger or other stuff to support that mission. And about number two, I think the major goal here is emission reductions more than other stuff. It's help and cost and saving and operation, sure, but really the major of this goal is emission reduction. And the saving really is not stable about the price of the gas or the supplies. It's up and down on the price of the kilowatts. And really that will be can like guarantee how that will be saving. It's more open discuss. But really that's a major for me is emission reduction for number two. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And yes, that is very important. And Tyler had a good point of saying that the savings don't really kick in till you've transitioned a majority of your fleet and it's been at least 5 to 7 years. So I guess if your biggest motivator is the savings, maybe you'll have to wait quite a bit to see when it kicks in.
I can share about Howard County government. Our goals are to be 42% electrified by 2030 and fully electrified by 2045. We are very much behind on these goals. We do not consider propane or CNG clean fuels. They're not suitable to really decarbonize our fleet. Hydrogen is not really an option on the East Coast yet. There's no fueling infrastructure in place. And that wouldn't be remedied by, even a large MEA grant. That's really on a larger scale. So for us, it's electrification. That's really the path toward decarbonizing the fleet. And that is the main goal, decarbonization. It is really about reducing greenhouse gas emissions and nothing else. If, fuel savings from reduced fuel costs kick in after 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, they do kick in. So that's the main issue. We are thinking in the long term. We're not looking at savings or cost. We're not looking to break even after a year for every single vehicle. That's not relevant, really. We have a large fleet, and cost reduction is a rolling. It's a long-term issue. It's not relevant if we break even after 3 years or 4 years or 7 years.
Thank you so much, Britta. although hydrogen would be very exciting to see at this point, and we do have a component of hydrogen for one of our grants at MEA as well, not for the infrastructure, but just for the procurement of vehicles. But it does make sense that nobody's doing it because there's not a good fueling source on the East Coast.
Well, let me. So this is Emmanuel Wagner with American Honda Motor Corporation. Just to clarify, there are hydrogen production facilities all across the East Coast. There's oil refining, which is one of the major consumers of hydrogen. The challenge currently is lies with the fueling infrastructure specifically, and that is very much just a function of the lack of federal or state support in that area, especially for county governments. Being able to build out limited fueling infrastructure for hydrogen is absolutely viable if there is state support. Unfortunately, it's not insignificant funding, so it's difficult to allocate. But what I would recommend to the municipalities is to advocate and highlight that in your decision making when you talk to state government officials, that hydrogen is something that you're looking at, because it's able to replace diesel 1-to-1 without major considerations or cutting back on operational uptime and whatnot. And highlight that so that they know that you're looking at it and can include that in future procurement or future grant funding. So just highlighting that. Clearly, I'm outing myself as working on the fuel cell side, but just wanted to throw that in there. And to answer the question here, if I can just make another second, because I need to drop in 7 minutes. So we've had a lot of interviews with potential fleet adopters over the last few years, and one of the key challenges is cost parity. In the end, a successful clean fleet transition is very much dependent on the ability to make the economics work. However, that's if you include life cycle costs, or if you include lower maintenance and so forth, but it has to pencil out. If there's state or federal funding to bring down the cost, that of course is a major benefit. But then also what I alluded to, being able to have the fleet operate as what is currently available. So if that's diesel or CNG or whatnot, transitioning to zero emissions or to clean fleets, it has to still be able to do what the current technology is able to do. So if that means range or being out in the field for 8 to 10 hours or something like that, that's another point that was highlighted in our conversations with customers. It's a very great concern, and especially on the transit bus side, having to buy 1.5 buses in order to battery buses in order to replace one diesel bus is not necessarily a viable approach in the long term. It may work for the near term, but so just throwing that out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. Ian, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I just have a quick question. Maybe Emmanuel, you might be able to answer this, or any other, I guess, like fleet operators. But just curious, when hearing about the key challenges for fleet operators being like cost parity, is there a specific timeline that you're hearing from these fleets on kind of when they want to reach the parity? Is it kind of like over like a 5-year horizon, or is it kind of just on a case-by-case basis?
Yeah, thank you for the question. That really depends on the fleet operator you're talking to. Some of them do essentially say they're only considering going to clean fleets if it's currently matching their costs for new diesel vehicles, for example. So others have longer timelines, but there's no median or sort of average. It really depends on the situation that the fleet operator is in. If they have to meet certain like ESG goals or scope 3 emission goals or whatnot for their company. I'm assuming some of the larger logistic companies have more motivation to do that quicker than others. So but yeah, unfortunately there's no standard that I can point at.
Gotcha, I appreciate that.
Sounds good. And with that, we can move on to the next prompt. And just wanted to quickly add, thank you, Manuel, so much for the insight on that. But as we are looking to maybe invest in hydrogen as a clean fuel source. It is very important to note that it matters very much where that hydrogen is coming from. As long as it is either green or maybe even blue hydrogen, it's good enough. But anything else is not really giving you a significant greenhouse gas emission reduction because it's really just coming from another fossil fuel. It only matters if your hydrogen is clean as well. But moving on to the next prompt with planning and decision making. Oh, Emmanuel?
Yeah, so I would like to just be cautious about that approach, because even if you use natural gas derived hydrogen, it does reduce your emissions by 30 to 40% immediately compared to gasoline or diesel. So you have a cost savings, considering that we're at what, like 5 to 10% of green electricity in Maryland. I would be really cautious to like having to require hydrogen be green or blue, but not the electricity for EV charging be green or blue. So just it's a little pet peeve of mine, because if we apply standards on carbon intensity of fuels, then they have to be applied to all fuels, not just the ones that we're talking about right now. So, but sorry, a little rant.
Oh, no, I agree 100%. It does matter where your electricity comes from as well. Well, moving on to the next phase of discussion. As everyone is looking to transition to a cleaner fleet, what metrics do you use to evaluate new technologies before piloting or purchasing? Do you have any specific data sets or tools that you use to estimate greenhouse gas reductions? At MEA, we typically use the A-Fleet tool, which is made by the Argonne National Laboratory to estimate life cycle emissions from EV fleets. But is there any other tool that is commonly being used?
I would also like to maybe bring in the really great resource of NAFA. I think Michael, he is our president of the Maryland Clean Cities and Communities Advisory Board. NAFA has a lot of really great resources that fleets can use to see how they want to maybe transition their fleet or just get some more resources and stuff. So if anyone is interested in learning more about NAFA potentially being a resource and helping with the planning and decision-making part, I will put the information in the chat to NAFA because I think that would be a really good resource as well. That is a little bit different from the approach of A-Fleet if a fleet is looking to look into that aspect. So just wanted to pop that out there that is a really great resource for fleets as well.
We can always, oh, yes, the Alternative Fuels Data Centers resource is quite great, and the Technical Response Service as well. We've worked with them quite a bit through Clean Cities. These are all great tools if you're looking to diversify your fleet. It does not have to be electric specifically. They also have options for CNG, biodiesel, other types of fuels as well.
And I want to flag that I did put the AFDC link in the chat if anyone wants to go to that website and a little bit more about their great resources as well.
Sounds great. Thank you, Ian. So if anyone has questions about those, you know who to reach out to. Well, we can move on to the next section, Here, we'd mostly like to discuss clean fuels and pathways that you are considering to clean up your fleet. And we did hear from most of you that you are looking to get EVs. And was there anyone who was looking to transition to another type of clean fuel just because EVs are not financially accessible right now?
We're looking at hydrogen-based like excavators. The biggest issue, like talked about before, is the infrastructure for the hydrogen itself within the region. It's very few and far. And then along with transporting the hydrogen to a site where the machine is located. And then a lot of the manufacturers are now going towards the hydrogen, just based on the energy that can be produced and the longevity to it. A lot of manufacturers where they're seeing, for instance, like a 400 horsepower diesel motor at, call it 2000 RPMs or 1800 RPMs, where that sustainable power generation to EV during its daily working cycle, it makes more sense to utilize the hydrogen, where the hydrogen will produce the equal or greater amount of energy per day shift for that unit. Where we're starting to see a lot of the bigger stuff that's 70,000 pounds and larger will be hydrogen based. If they're mobile, if they're in quarries or in plants or something, you'll see in-house or EV plug-in, like mining equipment. A lot of that's always been on market for probably the past 2 decades. It's just really, is it feasible to, at those quarries or plants, having that amount of sustained house power delivered to that location. A lot of the smaller stuff, like a lot of the EV stuff that we look at, is less than 10,000 pounds. Because we seen with a lot of manufacturers, when they're producing EV units, they tend to be heavier than a traditional diesel unit. So you're starting to see where the EVs, we have to play around, because we do a lot with elevated floors and weights and whatnot. So the EVs do tend to be a little bit heavier due to the power packs within them.
That is very interesting to know. And I know you have a lot of off-road clean fuel equipment. And would you like to maybe talk about any operational challenges that you experienced when you were first looking into electrification or any other sort of clean fuel? What we have seen most commonly is that people have issues with charging infrastructure, especially when they're looking to transition something that's vehicles that are a little more heavier, where you probably have to have in-house charging. You cannot really depend on public charging infrastructure.
Yeah, so when we started looking at EV, like charging stations that are in isolated areas and whatnot. Volvo, probably about this is probably 6 to 7 years ago. Volvo created a project that it's called Volvo Beam. Basically what it is, it's probably an 8-foot by 8-foot pallet system. It has a dual panel canopy on it with 2 battery resource boxes on it as well. So what the unit does is, Volvo's been a pioneer, and I work on our national board which Volvo is also involved with their sustainable energy partner, in which this unit you can take it out somewhere into a field or whatnot. It's solar powered. It'll charge the batteries on the panel, which it'll store enough energy within the system for I think 2 to 3 days of operating time. So if you end up with a cloudy or a rainy day, you have energy stored within it, and then the unit can go back to its charging station. It can get plugged in, and then it can go back to work. We've seen that as a charging possibility. A lot of our stuff for charging, we're in-house power. It gets it fluctuates because some properties have single phase, or they only have 240 and you need 480 volt to charge these units, where you then get into these issues where you're using manufacturers will talk about, yeah, you can charge the unit, it takes 10 hours or 12 hours overnight, but that's based on optimal conditions, saying it's a 480 three-phase system. And if that property or building doesn't have 480 three-phase, then you're dropping it down to 240 or a 120, where you're doubling or potentially tripling the time for charging. So now, say you have an EV unit there, and basically you need 3 EV units to work 3 days. One's got to work a Monday, one's got to work a Tuesday, one's got to work a Wednesday, and then they can cycle back through as the other 2 units charge. That's really an operational hurdle that we've seen. But for what we've learned is we try to pick and choose what unit's going where, and if it's optimal to put it there.
Thank you so much, Tyler. And that was really great to know about how you're using the Volvo Beam system. And I believe it does not even require any construction or anything. You can just move it around.
Yes.
That is excellent. Well, as we're talking about infrastructure, we can probably also move on to the next segment of the discussion. Next slide, please. Oh. And this is where we would like to dive deeper into infrastructure challenges. What are you looking to overcome? And have you had any vendor availability issues? I do know that cost for electrification is a very prominent issue in this space, because you do have to buy an electric vehicle, but you also have to invest in charging infrastructure, or you might have to invest in a system like the Volvo Beam, which can turn out to be quite expensive. This is not really an issue with other types of clean fuels, because you do have other fueling stations, but they're not as readily available as just gasoline. But did anyone else want to talk about any infrastructure or market reliability issues that they've been facing?
Hey everybody, this is Tyler Muntz with Frederick County Government. Has anyone had any issues finding, I guess, a reliable vendor for your EV charging network. We're at least with our first vendor, we've been running into a ton of issues. We're kind of looking for solutions. We've moved to a second vendor, which seems to be a much better solution, but we're just looking for feedback from anyone else.
I can jump in here on the topic of charging vendors. We've personally have had a lot of luck with Orange EV and InCharge.
Maggie, if you don't mind, could you shoot me some details on your contacts with InCharge? That's actually our vendor that we were struggling with.
Sure. Yeah, no problem.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
This is great. This is exactly what we're hoping to achieve with this session, where you come with questions and there's probably someone in this group who already has an answer for you. Was there anyone else who would like to talk about any infrastructure challenges, any vendor issues that they've been having with charging or with vehicle procurement? Hearing none, I guess we can move on to the next slide. And I believe this is the last section. Here, we would really like to hear from you on what kind of support you would like from an organization like MEA or any of the partners that we work with. Would it be funding? Would it be technical assistance? Which I don't think we can provide as MEA, but we'll try our best to find a resource that will work for you. And I guess what resources, trainings, or even case studies would help you move forward?
And to give a little context, for the medium duty, heavy duty zero emission vehicle grant program. So that program will be coming out for fiscal 27 on or around July 1st this year. And I can't make any promises, but I am in the design stage of that program. And this is where we would love to get, information on what would make that program a better and feasible type of program for you all in different fleets in the state. I know charging infrastructure has not been in the program in the past. I'm going to attempt to definitely put that in for fiscal 27 because we know that vehicles is just half of it. And that there are other challenges that are needed to be addressed. And that's where charging infrastructure comes in to help that. So that is something that we're looking at as well. But I just wanted to give a little context in that program that we'll be launching in July as well.
I guess the question really is, in your transition to a cleaner fleet, if you had to pick the biggest hurdle, what would that be? It could be charging infrastructure, it could be vehicle procurement, maybe finding a vendor that's feasible. It could be anything. I see George has a question in the chat on how most people go ahead with procurement of vehicles. Do they directly deal with dealers, RFPs, or other fleet purchase strategies? Anyone who has already started with their fleet transition, would you like to talk about this?
We can speak from Harbinger's side. We utilize our dealer partner network to get our vehicles to end users and consumers. And then we do have Sourcewell as an option as well that many municipals use.
That's great. Thank you, Mike. Oh, go ahead.
Yes, the support may be same point we discussed about the infrastructure. Really, I see from the project did one of them. It's the gap between what we need in the building as a facility. That's what's the requirement, let's say, between permits, how many amps, and coordinate with the BG or who supporting the power for the building and the contract. Because usually the contract will be, or vendor will be supply the EV charger, maybe install, he will see the panel or sub panel is good to go. But before we go through this, we need to be an RFP, make sure like really, I see this point really important, make sure and include all those details between permit, if needed, or how many, or the design paperwork is still in the building for future maintenance. We not just install on how they, where's the cable running under the building maybe, especially that EV charger will be a little far from the building. This is small details is really help for maintenance in the future. And Tyler, he bring really a good points about how that's structure, how the routine about daily, how we be full charge or let's say full capacity when we do this charger. For example, if we put 10 charger, they will charge all of them overnight when they drop off those vehicles. And that's one other challenge. It's many details, plus the warranties and contract warranties is really important because a lot of vendors, they just supply the equipment and maybe 1-2 years will be out of the business. So we want to make sure how that's guaranteed, this warranty is covered to help them maintain that equipment. Yeah, it's really, we can, like, let's say details a lot discuss in RFP and a proposal more than just start the work. It's important to not facing any issues when we put those chargers. That's my challenge usually. I face it before.
That's a great point to bring up. We have also seen with a couple of our grantees that they have a solid plan for charging infrastructure, maintenance, and vehicle procurement. But sometimes what happens is these companies tend to go out of business and now they're left with nothing. So it's always good to have a backup plan B, plan C, just in case things happen. Well, this is really the open floor section. If anyone wants to bring up any questions, concerns, to discuss anything concerning your clean fleet transition, this is where you would bring it up. But if not, feel free to scan this QR code or visit MEA's website, where we have a bunch of other programs that could maybe support you financially or even with technical assistance. But thank you all so much for engaging with us today. This was very insightful to know the challenges that you're facing, where you currently are with your fleet transition. And it's great to know that a lot of people are looking to transition to EVs with the bigger goal of greenhouse gas emission reduction in their mind and not just savings, which is also a great motivator.
And one more thing I'd like to note for everyone before you all hop off, if anyone is interested in potentially joining our advisory board, specifically for the Maryland Clean Cities and Communities Coalition, we'd be more than happy to have you all join. It essentially is a quarterly meeting that we have with different stakeholders, and we gather to kind of learn about potential challenges and needs in terms of, transitioning a fleet and whatever type of fuel that they may be looking to, electric, hydrogen, anything of that sort. So please feel free to reach out. We'll be sending a follow-up email after this. This presentation and recording will also be on the MEA website as well. We'll make sure to share that. But thank you so much for being here with us today, and we will definitely be all in touch. Have a great rest of your week, everyone. Stay warm and stay safe out there.